Ladies and gentlemen, most chess videos that you watch on YouTube will in some way, shape, or form try to improve your game. But I have a playlist on this channel, and that playlist is dedicated to some of the worst chess games that have ever occurred. It is called How to Lose at Chess, and you are watching a How to Lose at Chess video. Now, a little bit of context on this game. This game was posted on Reddit by an individual, and this individual's wife has recently gotten into chess. And we all remember our earliest days as beginners. Those games were absolutely ridiculous. Now, the good news is the wife is the hero. She is the protagonist of this video. She did not get below 1% accuracy. In fact, she was the opponent. But her opponent managed to play a game of chess that chess.com then deemed 0.9% accurate. That is one of the worst things I have ever seen. We are going to take a look at it right now. Now, the point of this is not to make fun of people. The point of this is to have a shared experience of what it is like to be a chess player at the early 100 ELO rank. It's difficult. Chess is a tough thing. That's why I wrote How to Win at Chess. That's also why I wrote Chess for Babies, in case you're a baby. I don't know, in case you need a little bit of help not eating the actual pieces. So let's take a look at this game. Now, there were still some instructive moments, but overall, you might laugh so hard that you pee yourself at the end of this video. I'm not responsible for any personal property damage. So, I'm gonna have a sip of water, and then we're gonna get into it. Hero wife opened the game with good principles. Credit to the teacher, who is likely, it could be herself and content and books. Could also be the husband. We don't know. E4, excellent first move. E5. I mean, it took two 100 rated players, basically, to play the two most common opening moves. Everything is good. So far, so good. And then the wife plays knight to c3, which to an experienced player is the Vienna opening. But in this case, it's just me move horse into center, because that is exactly how you should be playing in the beginning of a chess game. And also knight f3, which will happen on the next move. Now, black plays a move here that I have to admit, after recording a lot of content on the Vienna opening and also a course, I have never covered the following move. The legendary beginner plays the move g5. Now, let me tell you something. G5 is not a move. That is not something that's not you. There's no move pawn to g5. That's not a good move. It's not a good move for several reasons. Let me actually explain this to you. It's not a good move because while white is developing toward the center of the board with bishop and everything and preparing a castling move, this move not only doesn't develop, it also permanently weakens corresponding squares, like the light squares. You will never be able to defend them, and I will be able to infiltrate on them. Also, you permanently weaken the ability to castle. Also, in the long run, you give yourself just a totally targetable weakness. In fact, on my very next move, I can just fork you, and that's exactly what white did, because white is playing principal chess. The best move here for white, the best way to meet a flank attack in the early game, is to strike in the center. And this move would be extremely powerful because after you play the move pawn to d4, you create the threat here. You threaten to bring your queen out with a direct attack on the rook. Another problem with this move, and you have the bishop targeting this. So the move d4 is totally crushing, but knight f3 is very good. And now black actually defends both pawns with f6. But what's incredible is that it's already a completely lost position for black. And this is interesting because this is everything that you learn, and, you know, we teach beginners to be principled. Why? Because you can fatally weaken your own king as early as this move. Now white doesn't even have to develop and do all of this normal stuff anymore. Knight takes g5 is a knockout punch already. It just wins the game on the spot, which is very instructive because you open up this diagonal. You are not supposed to move your f and g pawns this early. If black were to take f takes g5, queen h5 check, king e7 only move. Then the move pawn to d4 just absolutely bludgeons the position. Bishop takes g5. Black can still defend the position, but you have pawn takes and knight to d5, and black is just totally losing with the king in the center. None of that happens, obviously. What am I talking about? Obviously, none of that happens. And now we have knight to d5. Knight d5 is just one of these moves that you play as a beginner. It's one of these moves that you're like, well, I brought my pieces out, so I got to go in. So any beginner watching this, including the hero, the protagonist of this game, should know that you generally cannot attack a fully set up position with 1 or 2 pieces. It's just generally speaking not going to work. It could be if it's a queen and they have created sufficient weaknesses like they have over here, but everything is protected even though it's standing terribly. So early on in the game, use your pawns and use your bishops and your knights all together. Use as many of them as you can to break down the position, and ultimately if the opponent has not played principled, their position will fall apart. Knight d5 is not a good move because actually the knight can just be attacked, and by a total miracle, black actually plays this move. Now what's incredible is that the position is still horrendous because again, knight takes e5 and queen h5 is just winning, but I think just for playing this move, black should have had an accuracy above 1%. I don't know what chess.com was doing. I mean, I don't know how it was so brutal. But the protagonist moved the knight back to e3 and now realizes, yeah, I actually can't win the game just by moving my horses. You have to use your pawns. You have to use your bishops. Black now plays a move that is just so mysterious. I can't even begin to explain it. You would think that black would continue to move pawns in the middle, or you'd think black would go, wait a minute, my opponent has moved a couple of horses, because this is what beginners do. They look at the other side, they go, oh, horses, so maybe I move my horse too, just to show that I also know how to do it. Alternatively, as a beginner, you might not be looking at the other side at all. Anyway, black plays the move a5. a5 is a very mysterious move because it's completely horrific. It doesn't meet the demands of the position whatsoever. I mean, really, a5 is kind of like a 2-year-old just like randomly picking up a piece and randomly putting it on a square and miraculously made a legal move. Now our protagonist develops the bishop, which actually is a fantastic move, except not now. Which, you know, the way black played this position, you kind of had to meet the pawns with the pawns. You had to keep the same energy. Now black can play the move b5, and in many ways poses some problems here as the bishop could almost be trapped. It's almost a miracle it's not trapped. It would have to give itself up for this knight, and now black doesn't even have a worse position because white did not, you know, break down with the pawns. The longer you let the pawns stand out like this, the more space that they're going to take away. Anyway, none of that really matters because when black played the move b5 attacking this bishop, this pawn was protected. You couldn't take it. Our protagonist unfortunately blundered her bishop. This is a miscalculation. You lose 3 points for 1. It's just not a good deal. And now black with the look, I can't believe the computer is giving attacking the bishop and then taking it a low accuracy. Really, like I honestly I feel kind of bad because like what do you want them to do? They played b5 and they took the bishop. And our protagonist took with the knight. So now white is down a bishop for a pawn, and white is also losing. However, black's position is still so bad, it is possible to lose the game immediately on the next move with bishop to a6. Bishop a6, again, basically re-loses the game, because now there is still this queen h5 check lurking, and so the protagonist with white can play knight takes e5, pawn takes, and then queen h5, and then bishop takes. But that is obviously a very tall task for somebody who's a beginner, considering you are just kind of trying to move what's in front of you. Anyway, black plays bishop to a6. The knight is targeted, but is it threatened? No. Do we have to move it? No. How do we know that? We haven't finished developing the rest of the pieces. Like here with white, I would castle, and I would try to develop the bishop, and then connect my rooks, and then I would open the center. In general, this is how I teach beginners. White, unfortunately, tries to win a piece back immediately, playing knight to b6. Knight to b6 is very tactically flawed because the knight can be taken in one move. Beginner level tactics, this is actually in my second book, How to Win at Chess Next Level. It is not out at the time of recording this video. It's out in October 2026. But I mentioned how the first level of tactics that you at some point need to be seeing 90% of the time, 9 out of 10 times, is one movers. Literally a one mover. Like it's just placed in front of you and your reward is taking it. Or the opposite, preventing yourself from making such moves. And here black sees this and is like, well, that's awfully stupid. And I just play rook a7. Yeah, black saw that the rook was hanging and moved it. It's a very logical transaction, except for the fact that the knight could have been taken in one move. And now our protagonist spots that and actually brings the knight back, but this follows the wisdom that you cannot play a game of chess with a horse. The chess gods have granted you many, many pieces, and now you are moving your knight to c3, and then d5, and then e3, you know, and then c4, and then b6. And then back to c4. And I have bad news, my friends. It gets even worse than that because then the knight went back to d6. The knight. c3. just jumping all over the place. c3, d5, e3, c4, b6, c4, d6. A death wish of the knight. It can be taken down multiple times. But black, very simply, the king is checked. You already know what's going to happen. The king is going to move to e7, and now the king has been disturbed. Now, this is the way you win a game of chess. You have to get to the king. It's like winning in Quidditch. You know, you gotta get the golden snitch. Now the protagonist sees the knight is hanging and plays knight f5. Look, it has been 12 moves, and the knight has been responsible for about 70% of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I take that back. The knight has been responsible for 3/4, 8 out of 12. 75% of white's moves have been made with this knight. And the knight goes here. The king goes there. Now, will our protagonist blunder the knight again? No! Castling. Honestly, fantastic. This is really good. I just wish it happened a little bit sooner. And now with black, you know, you have a position where you are up material, but your king is terrible and your pieces are all strangely coordinated. What you should do now is take a bit more space with your pawns or trade pieces. You are up material, maybe offer a trade. This move is considered losing because of the same tactic that has been appearing 10 times in this game. But since we already know that that's never going to happen, it's a much higher chance something like this happens, and now white just loses one of their active pieces. So in chess, when you are winning by material, you have to protect your king. You have to make trades to go ahead. Black plays the move d5. Don't hate this move, but it is once again losing. It is once again losing because white can take or take and play queen h5, but that is obviously not happening. White goes here. Now, pawn takes d5 is not a bad move. You saw a pawn, and you saw that it can be taken. We literally cannot ask for any more from a beginner. And now black should see that this pawn is hanging and take it back with either of these two pieces. Pawn takes d5. This was perhaps the most straightforward transaction in this entire game, and it means that there is hope. There is hope for the beginners. Now, here with white, you haven't developed the bishop. I would move it out a little bit. I would maybe offer a trade of pawns. d4 is a very unfortunate blunder. Another thing that you could do is move your rook to the middle of the board. c4, okay, fine. You know, we kind of got there in the end. We're going to probably lose a pawn here. But look, what you have to see when you play the move c4 as a beginner is pawn takes, maybe as a bonus you see bishop takes. As a more advanced beginner and early intermediate, you got to realize as the board is opening up, so is the vision of all the other pieces. And that is difficult. That is not something that comes until you're like 500, 600. And if you're watching this and you're like, well, I developed that skill when I was 200. Yeah, Magnus, we know. Thank you. You don't have to comment that. But for the rest of you, no, you didn't. And stop lying to yourself in my comment section. My favorite thing that some of you do is like, I'll be recording a video and I'll say none of you would have ever spawned to that move. And you would have been like, I'm actually offended, Levy. I did see that move. I read those comments and I find them hilarious because you are lying, not just to me and not just to yourself, but to the rest of the channel when you write a public comment like that. We know you wouldn't have seen that move. All of us know. All 200 to 300 to 400,000 people that end up watching the video, and if it goes viral, God forbid, it could be millions, and you are lying to all of us. One must not tell lies, to quote a Hogwarts professor. c4 on the board. Black plays d4. Okay, so look, black took a pawn here, but this time black doesn't take, black pushes. Fine. It's fine. This is fine. Now, what is white going to do next? What is white going to do next? I'll tell you, as a master, what I see in this position. What I see in this position is, I see that the position is closed, right? And what does that mean? A lot of pawns, they're all kind of locked together. I'm looking potentially at, with a weak king here, sacrifices to open things up, but that's way too high level thinking. What is our protagonist going to play? b3. Okay. We take it. The more moves you make as a low rated player without blundering anything, the better it is. Now, black is probably going to take this pawn. Okay. And now white can take with the pawn or with the queen. Both are good. Pawn takes. Excellent. Now the rook is open. This is what we call a pin. Now the bishop can't move. The rook can move because the knight is protecting the bishop. Now what is black going to play here? Black plays the move e4. e4 is just a bad move. It's a bad move because not only does it lose that pawn, just a one mover, it also stops defending this pawn. So both of these pieces can take this. But of course this should be taking as this is under fire. Does our protagonist see pawn takes e4? Honestly, white saw the more complicated of the two. White saw the attack on the knight and then took on d4, and now queen h5 check is actually checkmate. That is literally mate. If pawn takes d3, this is the only check in the position that doesn't lose anything, and by accident, white would win. And that is why you always need to look for checks. I didn't say always do the check. Don't do the check hoping that it's mate. Look for checks, hoping that they are mate. I cannot believe that black plays the move that they play in this position. The top computer move, and yet still chess.com gave this poor soul a 0.9% accuracy for this game. The move is h5. All black wanted to do was complete the quest on chess.com to move every pawn during the game. Black moved 7 of the pawns, or maybe they had been captured, but regardless, only this pawn hasn't moved yet, and black moved it, and by a complete miracle, the queen cannot even go there anymore because it's protected by the rook. Just for stopping the mate, how does chess.com give this poor person a 0.9%? I mean, just absolutely brutal. F3 by our protagonist. Everybody knows that instead of taking a pawn for free, you should offer to trade it, because that's, you know, what's funny is that the move F3 logically is like these pawns are interacting, right, when you get to F3, but these pawns are just not interacting. Fascinating how the brain works when you're a chess beginner. And black, meanwhile, absolutely bravely, does not take this pawn, does not take this pawn. This pawn just goes straight down the middle of the board. That doesn't work. It can be taken, and it is simply overextended. Knight takes would be bad because you would stop guarding this knight, which you saw already, and the protagonist takes with the bishop. Now black's position is probably back to practically lost again, because your king is so weak, you have no pawns, and since you have no pawns, you have no structure, which means your pieces are just going to be on a free-for-all. They're going to kind of like wobble around, and slowly you're going to lose all of them. Black continues with a pawn. Why? Because it's just easiest to push a freaking pawn. Stop asking questions. What is wrong with you? All right? You played like this once before as well. So did I. Just kidding. I was actually born around 500. I did a lot of reading when I was in the womb. They didn't have Chess for Babies, but I just listened to the auditory stuff. I came out of the womb at around like 500 chess.com rapid. I know that might be hard to believe, but you have no way to verify whether I'm telling the truth or not. And that's what the internet is all about in 2026. So I win, you lose. Pawn to h4. And now what the best move is for white is, go after the king. Pawn to f4, probably not going to happen. All right, pawn to g3, we don't mind. White is clearly in the beginner tunnel vision of offering pawn trades. White has done this several times, actually. White has done this with c4, with b3, with f3, and with g3. White just loves to offer pawn trades, which every beginner needs to develop their playing style. Black captures, and now white should take with the pawn. For reasons I can't fully understand, white decides to flex here. White plays a backwards knight move for absolutely no reason. I think literally white is the only beginner at this level on the entire planet and maybe in the entire galaxy that knows that knights can go backwards and plays knight takes g3. Completely and totally and utterly unnecessary. I mean, we could have just gone here. This is honestly just a flex. People at this level don't know pieces go backwards. Like, that has not been made abundantly clear. And I have proof of that because in this position, with a queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, and 2 knights, black continues to just mindlessly throw pawns forward. I mean, black has played this game. It has been 22 moves. 18 of those 22 moves were made by pawns for black. 18 of 22. That is 80%, 81%. That's 9 out of 11. That's 81 over 99. That's 81% of the moves have been played. That's crazy. By the way, I don't think kids can simplify fractions nowadays that fast. Like, I think you guys do everything with the chat GPTs, no? Like, I'm hearing all sorts of crazy stuff about school. But anyway, yeah, f5 is just bad. Both knights can take it. That's just not, yeah, and protagonist takes on f5. Excellent stuff. The only problem for white, the only problem is that these pieces are really far away. Like, if the queen could get there, that would be great. That would be mate, in fact, not just great. Now, yeah, I mean, look, this is why chess.com gave this dude a 0.9% accuracy, because here, black facing the last pawn that they have and all the other pieces plays the move. I legitimately don't think you can predict this move even if you tried. There are so many legal moves for black. Black plays king f6. I'm gonna be honest. I think long-term chess career, I'm gonna go with white having the future brighter prospects. Now, here there's a few ways that white can, build the advantage. One is immediately capitalizing on tactical vision, sacrificing the bishop, attracting the king to that square, and then forking. That's never gonna happen. However, white plays the top computer move here. Why? Because white loves pawn trades. What have you not learned? Black has 1 pawn remaining out of 8, and white will still find a way to offer a pawn trade because that is what she does. She finds the freaking pawn trade, and she plays f4, and this just so happens to be the best move. Why does it so happen to be the best move? Because there's a rook and a king, and once you open up, f4 also opened up the queen and the rook. One pawn move brings 14 points of material into the game. That is the beautiful thing about chess, and as you get better, you start, like, developing this sense, you know? Now, black is totally lost. So how does the game end? Well, black finally realizes they have to move other pieces. They can't just move the king and the pawn. This is a pawn. All the other pawns are gone. Black plays queen d7. Unfortunately, it's too little too late, although I do have to say, it is never too late to lose a game of chess. And I implore you, as you go up the rating ladder, always keep an eye on how you could lose. Not because you want to be pessimistic, because you want to be practical and careful. Here, black is 2 moves away from checkmating you. I know it doesn't feel like it, because I've been making fun of the way black has been playing the entire game, and also probably you're not paying attention. But you are always very close to losing in chess. Yes, even if they only have a king left. You are very capable, I promise. So queen d7, queen h7 is still there, but of course, our protagonist is just the master of pawn takes pawn. She has mastered pawn captures, and king e5 on the board. Now, king e5 is not really where the king should be. So you see how at the beginning of the game, the king is behind everybody and you have this giant pawn wall to protect you and you're taught about castling? If after 20 moves, your king is walking to the middle of the board and all the pawns are gone, and half your pieces haven't left their home squares, you haven't played chess, okay? You played mahjong. I have no idea what you're playing. You're playing something else. It's a different game, and it's not chess. Now here, white has mate and won. But if you have been following this channel for a long time, you know my rule. If there's mate in 1, you gotta find something better than that. And honestly, our protagonist here finds a great maneuver. A really impressive maneuver. She's like, yo, I wanna check the king with the rook, so I have to put the rook there. So I'm gonna go rook f4. Honestly, don't hate this. I love the fact that there is foresight being displayed. Bishop f4 just happened to be a mate, but I understand it's not easy. You have to see that every square is covered by a different piece. That's not simple. Rook f4 on the board. And black can stop rook e4, but of course, black does not stop that. But I do have to commend our protagonist, because our antagonist, because after 26 moves, they remembered they have a knight. But rook e4 was played, and white won. And when the game was ultimately reviewed, black played, wow, on my screen, black played at 0.8% accuracy. Not even 0.9. That's all I have for you today. And hopefully I haven't ruined it. Get out of here.